Sunday edition of The Handle here on DraftKings Network, and VSiN. Matt Brown and Mike Somich coming to you, as always, proudly brought to you by DraftKings Sportsbook. Mike, we had a decent day over there in sports yesterday. If you were a viewer, I don't know necessarily if you were a bettor, specifically an underdog bettor. Not great for you out there, that is for sure, as we kind of take a look at what happened yesterday in the NBA, Mike, and NHL as well. All six favorites win. Over in the NBA, all six cover as well. And so if you were a dog bettor yesterday, we know there's some people out there try to take I don't get the whole thing of I only bet dogs, but I can't really understand that. But there are some people who only bet underdogs. It was a bad day for them, that's for sure.
Yeah, if you're a dog or pass player, hopefully you passed yesterday, because the dogs were not barking. You mentioned it, 4-0 in the NBA for the favorites. They won straight up and against the spread. And then the NHL, both the favorites covered the minus a goal and a half. Hopefully you got some Bruins there, minus 130. Maybe even took the minus a goal and a half, plus 185 there. Interesting series. That Bruins-Leafs game was intense right from the get-go. Excited to see how that one goes. And then I'm looking forward to talking about this Lakers and the Lakers and the Nuggets series as well, because I've got some takeaways from that game last night.
Yeah, so let's just kind of, before we get into the high five, let's do a quick little recap of what we took away from things last night and, yesterday and last night. And we'll start with the early game, the Cavs and the Magic. We were actually on air. One of the things that I said I was kind of holding off, even though I was leaning Magic, was I wanted to see what Donovan Mitchell looked like. And if he really was, he was saying he was 100%. If he really was 100%, then, hey, I think that Cavs team is probably better. And certainly from what he put up in game one, it looked like he's 100%. It's a convincing 14-point win. And Mike, really, if you're on the Magic side of things, and you and I both kind of gave the case for the Magic yesterday, it was that they were going to be able to prevent a big scoring output, which 97 points in the NBA, obviously not a huge scoring output, but they were going to have to really, you called it a rock fight, and they were going to really have to suppress the scoring, and then they were going to have to do at least a little bit on their side. And the problem with the style of the Magic just in general, right, is they're just not a really good scoring team yet. I think that they will progress into that. Next 2 or 3 years, this Magic team might be really, really good, but that's not them this year, and that really, really showed up yesterday.
It did, and the three-point shooting was a huge issue for the Magic. We talked about it. They were 2 for 17 at one point in this game. They've got to shoot the ball better. Honestly, you tell me Cleveland scores 97, you got to think the Magic have a legit shot at winning the game. They just could not get their offense going one iota. Interesting here to see the total drop for game 2 as well. We were on the under 207.5. We talked about in-game unders when it got up to 217.5. The total for game 2, Matt, 202. They dropped almost 5 full points from the opening line in game 1. So we're going to see this continue to go down. 202 makes it tough to play the under. That is a low score for an NBA game in 2024.
We see the Timberwolves go out and just get it done big time against the Suns. And you get 31 from Durant, but then you only get 15 from Beal. You only get 18 from Booker. Booker 5 of 16 from the field with all of that. And you look at this Suns team, Mike, and, again, another team that I didn't pull the trigger on but was leaning towards. So I'm glad I didn't bet these leans yesterday, or I would have been in trouble with all of this. But, I mean, again, it just comes down to where the Suns going to be able to fire on this really, really good, almost historically good defense that we get from the Timberwolves. And at least through game 1, the answer was no.
No, it was no, but I was more impressed with the Timberwolves offense.
Yeah.
I mean, you talked about Anthony Edwards, not sure if we could trust him here going into the playoffs. He came out and played phenomenal, 33 points. He was 14 for 24 from the field. I talked about how Karl Anthony Towns had to be key for them on the offensive end and play well. He did just that, went 5 for 9 from the floor, 1 for 2 from 3, 8 for 8 from the free throw line. I thought the Minnesota offense looked very good against a Suns team that had been highly rated from a defensive efficiency standpoint down the stretch here. If Minnesota is able to score 120 a game, the Suns are in trouble.
Sixers and the Knicks, 111-104. Knicks over the Sixers. Of course, the big concern there is what happened to Joel Embiid. Is he going to be okay? Even if he pushes forward, you read the stuff this morning saying like, we're not shutting him down. We're going to try to persevere through all of this. But obviously not going to be 100%, really need 100% Joel Embiid if they're going to have a chance against this kind of underrated Knicks team. I think everyone looked at this and just assumed like, oh, okay, the Sixers played a lot of the season without Embiid. So and here's Embiid. They're just going to go in and they're going to get it done against this Knicks team. And this Knicks team is feisty, man. They got some really good players, and they showed that yesterday.
They did, and you had everything encapsulated in one moment where the upside of the Sixers and the scary part of the Sixers was all shown. Embiid throws a alley-oop to himself off the backboard, slams it home, and you're like, yes, here we go. Comes down awkwardly on that left knee and sits there on the floor holding the knee, and you're like, well, made it 2 quarters. We're like, you don't know how long he's going to be able to play. The Knicks seem like they have control of this series, and I thought they responded exceptionally well in the fourth quarter, specifically after giving up a big run to this Sixers team coming out of the break. They were able to rebound, respond, and cover.
Yeah, and then the final game of the evening, the Nuggets and the Lakers, and I'm curious as to your take on this one. For me, it's just better team won. I mean, the Lakers didn't play bad. The Lakers played pretty good, actually, in my opinion. It's just the Nuggets are just better, and I think it just really, really came to in the fourth quarter last night whenever the Lakers would get it like to 8, they would get it to 7. They would get it, at one point they got it to 6. And that was it. And then the Nuggets would just go back and they would hammer two shots in a row. They would have a good defensive possession. They had whatever it was. They're just the better team. And I think it just showed yesterday the Lakers with I would give it like an A effort, and they still lose by double digits.
Well, that's the thing. They scored 60 in the first half. LeBron James looked like an absolute beast. You had Anthony Davis put up 32 and 14, and they lost by more than 10 points. Like, what more do you want from this Lakers team? It just doesn't feel like they're going to be able to consistently compete with this Nuggets team. Right now, the over-under for series length is 5.5 games. Under is -110. Tell me how the Lakers take 2. If they play like that and they can't win, how do they win 2 games in this series?
I agree with you, but as we do each and every show, we got 5 things we're looking forward to betting today.
All right, classic. High five.
It's time for the Handles High Five.
High five. All right.
Number 1.
We will continue on with the NBA, and we'll have a much more in-depth conversation with that. We have the Heat and the Celtics today. We have the Mavs and the Clippers today. We have the Pacers and the Bucks today, and then we end with the Pelicans and Thunder, a 14-point favorite Celtics team over the Heat. The Clippers are sitting as 3-point home dogs to the Mavericks. The Bucks are a point home dog to the Pacers, and then the Thunder are 8.5-point favorites there over the Pelicans. So some interesting angles here. We do have a couple of bigger spreads today in this one, Mike, and then a couple of tighter ones. And so some angles here I think that we'll run through as we try to break these series down.
Yeah, I'm excited to see these 2 middle games. The 3:30 Eastern game, Dallas and the Clippers, I think is going to be phenomenal. We got Dallas there as a short 3-point favorite. And then we've got this Indiana-Milwaukee series at 7 o'clock tonight that's tipping off. I really want to see what Milwaukee looks like without Giannis. Is Indiana going to be able to exploit them with their athleticism? That one's a fun one as well. Indy -1 right now in that game.
Let's keep it rolling.
Number 2.
Over in the NHL, over on the ice, we got 4 today, Mike. Only 2 yesterday. We got 4 today. Lightning, Panthers, Capitals, and Rangers, Avalanche and Jets, and the Predators and the Canucks in the late game. The early game actually coming at you guys in about a half an hour. So if you want to get in anything on that, you got about 30 minutes. That's Lightning, Panthers, where we're sitting right now is the Panthers -180. Favorites at home, +150 on the Lightning on the road as underdogs. 5.5 totals in all 4 of these games, Mike. Of course, we'll break these down a little bit further in the show.
Yeah, I'm surprised we got 5.5 on Tampa and Florida here. This seems like it's a series that should be at 6. We saw all 3 of the games in the regular season go well over that 6-goal total. So lean toward the over here with Tampa and Florida. I also like Florida quite a bit. Talked about them -1.5 +154 yesterday. I've got that in the account. I've got Florida to win the series -170. I've got them to win the series by 2 games or more. That's +115. So excited to see this first puck drop here with Tampa and Florida. We'll cover the other 3 in the Pucks and Ponies segment.
Yeah, one's kind of a toss. One's kind of a toss-up. So if you wanted to play, as we mentioned, both favorites won yesterday. If you wanted to play the 3 actually prohibitive favorites today, you could get +265. If you wanted to roll with the Panthers, the Rangers, and the Canucks, you could get +265 on that if that's the way you want to go about betting hockey today. Maybe that's how I'll bet hockey today, considering I'm not a hockey bettor. So maybe I'll just throw all the favorites in a parlay and see if I can't hit a lottery ticket. Let's keep it going.
Number 3.
Yeah, rolling right into hockey and horses. Of course, we will get your picks over on the ice a little bit later, but where are we headed for the Ponies today?
We're going to talk about Keeneland again, but they have the best races going right now, so we're going to head over to cover a couple from Keeneland yesterday. Pretty tough, man. We should have just gone with the 11 Silver Knot to win. Ends up winning at 5-1, knocks off your 4-5, or it actually went off a 3-5 favorite there in Bold Act. And Bold Act just got an absolutely brutal trip, but Silver Knot got exactly what we expected. Was able to get one horse go out, and it was cheap speed. Silver Knot sat right behind, was able to fly by down the stretch, and no one could catch him because of all the issues everybody else had behind.
Let's keep it going.
Number 4.
We'll check in on golf. No real bets to be made here unless you just want to lose money betting against Scotty Scheffler because just the greatest golfer maybe we've ever seen. So Scotty Scheffler in 2024 here, Mike. T5, T17, T6, T3, T10, win, T2, win, and he's leading heading into the final round here today. What else can we say? I mean,
what's up with that T17, Matt?
What are we doing
in 17th?
Yeah,
Come on, man.
I know. I mean, it's absolutely wild. By the way, over on the women's side, Nelly Korda, if you've not been following that, has won 4 straight tournaments and is 1 stroke off the lead heading into the final round today, going for her 5th win in a row. That's pretty good. Pretty good.
We need to get like walk-up music in golf so she can be playing Nelly's "I Am Number One" every time she steps up to the tee because she is just dominating that women's tour right now.
She can steal that from you for free. Actually, let's wrap it up.
Number 5.
And we are going to talk a lot of NFL draft today. This is our last show with you guys before the draft takes place on Thursday. And so, Mike, we're going to talk every single angle that we can possibly get to here. Talk about the bets that are already in our accounts. Talk about maybe some bets that we would pull the trigger on depending on where the number ends up and shifts and things like that. But it's an awesome betting event and one that we are going to talk about a ton today here on the program.
I counted this morning. I got 22 bets in my account. I believe 10 of them are still at the current number, so there's still 10 playable. We'll get to all of those today.
Yeah, I mean, the ones that the numbers have moved for me, I'll let you know whether I think it's still something that you're going to be able to get to or not. But when we come back again, we're going to get into these NBA games.
This is The Handle with Matt Brown and Mike Summage on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Hey, you've got a computer, you got a phone, you got a tablet, you got anything that can connect you to the internet. Go in, type in VSiN.com, and you pop that puppy open, and you're going to find a really good-looking website. We did a whole bunch of work behind the scenes to make this thing more mobile-friendly as well, so when you do pop it up on your phone, you're going to be able to navigate it much more easy. And guess what? We got the best bets on there. You got the betting splits. You get the articles, all of the different things that you love. You can go in, whatever state you're in. You can sort the odds, make sure that you're getting the best number out there. Betting guides, tools galore, everything like that, Mike. If you haven't done it yet, we've talked about it enough. What are you waiting on? Go ahead, VSiN.com.
I got to say, Matt, I'm not sure what looks better. The new website or your hair? I mean, it's a pretty close 1-2 there.
Oh, look at you calling me out. Look at that. See, some of the stuff that happens on the VSiN Plus subscription between the gets aired. Our dirty laundry coming out. I did switch hair product. I did. So it's a thing. We're working through it, right? We're working through it. We'll see. I don't know. Feedback is welcome. This is just one of those things where it's a step, right? You use the same stuff for like multiple years, and then you make that switch, and it's sometimes you're wondering, like, is this good for me? Is it good for me? Is it bad for me?
I'm gonna say it's good for you, man. I think it's an upgrade. I like it. You're looking good.
I appreciate it, buddy.
Almost as good as the website. Not as good as the website,
yes,
but the hair does look solid today.
So we have a tip-off coming in less than an hour. It is the Heat and the Celtics. This thing is 14 in favor of the Celtics. 209 is your total. If you want to bet the Celtics on the money line, you just got to lay 1,200 to win 100. No big deal. Minus 1,200 over there. It's plus 750 for the Heat on the money line here. Mike, you already know I bet the Celtics to sweep this thing. I think it's a great story. I like what the Heat do as a team, as a culture. I like what Spoelstra brings. I didn't like the crowd not showing up in their play-in game. How weird was that? Sitting there looking at like the expensive seats and they're empty. Like Kendrick Perkins at least called them out. Like in the halftime, he goes, "Where are the people at?" This could be the last game of the year, and like no one's sitting in the expensive seats. But this guy just coaches, circles around a lot of the coaches in the NBA. I think he is easily one of the top 3-4 coaches in the NBA. But it's all going to come to an end here. I think it's going to come to an end here quickly. This Celtics team is better every single facet of the game, and that was even when Jimmy Butler was in the lineup. And as we know, Jimmy Butler's not going to be in the lineup.
Yeah, this is a tough one for me. I feel like just so square in saying this, but I almost want to lay the 14 with the Celtics here. They're just so much better. I made this game 15.5, so I have some some equity on that Celtics side. I consider taking a piece of Celtics first half. You can get that at 8.5 in a couple places. I think that's a pretty good number. I'm just not sure how Miami able to match up with them. Now, you mentioned Spoelstra. He's the big key here. They're going to throw some zone at Boston. They're going to throw a couple different things defensively. But this is a different Boston team than what we saw last year. The addition of Porzingis, who's been healthy, played well all season. The way White has been played all season. The fact that you have Drew Holiday now, who's a stopper on the defensive side, but also a decent offensive weapon. Just a different beast from a Celtics perspective. I think they roll. I think they roll through this series. I agree with you. I looked at the over/under total games, 5.5. It's minus 475 to go under 5.5 games. I can't really argue with it, but I'm not laying 475 from a juice perspective either. It feels like Celtics in 4, Celtics in 5, and I think they get off in a big manner today. End up covering the number.
I think we could make a case for taking the 14 if you think the Celtics are up 20 in the fourth quarter. And if you're up 20 in the fourth quarter, they will. I mean, like I said, I think the Celtics have a sense of urgency in this series. I think that they understand what has happened to them in the past. They're not going to let any silliness happen. But if you're playing this smart, Mike, if you're up 20 in the fourth quarter, you are going to get your guys out of there. You don't want any sort of Embiid situation. You don't want to have to go through them playing meaningless minutes and have any sort of chance of a freak rolled ankle or whatever it might be or something. And so, I think that there is a case to be made where if you really, really like the Celtics, you might even lean towards the Heat a little bit in this game with the 14, strictly because they could be up so big that you really are getting the end of the bench towards the end of the game.
And that's why I mentioned the first half. The Celtics was the best team ATS in the NBA in the first half this year. I feel like it keeps rolling today. 14 is a big number. Like we talk about backdooring games in the NFL. It feels like Miami could backdoor the plus 14 here. I don't think they're able to keep it close early. The one problem is Spoelstra is going to be a little more inventive defensively in this first half. And so you may see some of those wrinkles early in this game. It could be the reason you see Boston not able to jump out to a big lead early. But I just don't know where the points come from here for Miami. I like Boston, also a very good defensive team. It doesn't get talked about enough because of all the star power you have on offense. I'm not sure how Miami's going to be able to score without Butler in here. I don't trust Hero to be able to get it going. Bam's a great player, but he's not a guy who's going to put up 35 in a playoff game. Boston first half, I think, is the cleanest look in this spot.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things where you look at it and you think, without Jimmy out there, as good of a defender as he is, how much zone are we going to see from Miami? And if there's a lot of zone, then maybe they could keep it. It's going to slow things down a little bit. Certainly, any easy points might be a little bit harder to come by because you're not getting guys get left alone and stuff. So like I said, Spoelstra's the key to this. I imagine he might come out and just say, like, all right, if you guys can just bang threes on us all day long, then so be it. We're just going to sit in a zone. We're not going to give you anything other than that. And what if they're not making them? So again, I don't want to lay it, and I think if anything, I would take the points with the Heat, despite the fact that I have a Celtics to sweep the series, if that makes any sense to you.
But you got to think that Boston knows they're going to come out in a zone, right? Yeah. If we're talking about it here, that like, hey, this Miami team, they don't have the people to guard you man-to-man. They're going to play zone. We saw them play zone in the play-in games. You got to think Missoula's like, hey, let's practice against the zone.
Yeah.
Let's use Porzingis right in the middle at the free throw line. We've got zone busters on this team. You'd hope that Boston is well coached enough, and this is the big question here, the coaching matchup in this series, to know what is coming from this Heat team. I think they should. I would if I was coaching Boston, but we'll see what they do here. But I still think Boston's just too much for Miami today.
So we are, let's call it 3 hours, 15 minutes away from the second tip, which would be the Mavericks and the Clippers. This is 3 in favor of the Mavs on the road. 222.5 is your total. If you think the Clippers win this thing outright, plus 124. Man, I just don't know what to think about this Clippers team, Mike. There's so much weird stuff going on. The Kawhi situation. You hear all these rumors coming out about Paul George has already decided he's headed out of town. And then if you look on the other side with the Mavs, I mean, it's kind of like, it seems like it's two teams going in opposite directions here, with the Mavs heading in the positive side and the Clippers heading the other direction.
And the Clippers have had the highest of highs this season. They were phenomenal out of the All-Star break, playing great basketball. People were talking about them winning the title, but man, they have not been able to continue that same play. We'll see if they're able to do it and flip that switch here in the playoffs. I just don't think it's very likely. I like Dallas -3. I didn't get to the window on this one.
Yeah.
I did play Luka Doncic, most points in the game, -105. I thought that was a very good number considering Kyrie probably the person who challenges him for that. And I think that Luka is going to be the one who ends up putting more points on the board. We've seen him dominate this Clippers team in the playoffs before. It's a great matchup for him. And then, you look at the Clippers side, it's like Paul George has one foot out the door. You've got Harden, who he can show up big time in these playoff games, but man, he had a lot of stinkers as well.
And we don't know what's going on. The last stuff we got from Woj, the last thing we got from Woj was all indications that Kawhi will miss game one. There's nothing confirmed yet, but all indications, which probably means he's going to miss game one.
It sounds like. I think Dallas -3 is the right side here. Again, haven't gotten the window. I did play that Doncic prop because I do think he ends up with the most points here.
Pacers and the Bucks. This is sitting 1 in favor of the Pacers on the road over the Bucks. 231.5. Of course, big injury news with the Bucks is Giannis unlikely to play here. And so you get this now, a Pacers team where if they can steal game one on the road here, Mike, the way that the Pacers like to play, it is they're going to live and die by running. I mean, it's just what they do. But if you're able to steal game one here, I wonder if the Pacers aren't the play here in the series, because this is, these game ones, we always talk about game sevens, but I mean, these game ones are pretty important too if you can steal one on the road.
They are very important. And this Milwaukee team really stumbled home here. No Giannis in this game, as you mentioned. And when you watch this Indiana team, they are exactly what Milwaukee doesn't want to face. It's athletic, young, fast team that can go up and down the court. I think this is a terrible matchup for Milwaukee, especially with Giannis out. There's no athleticism left on this Milwaukee team. You've got Dame, you've got Middleton. They're getting up there in age. I think this is a phenomenal spot for Indiana. I played them -1. I have them minus a game and a half in this series. I have the Indiana in 6 at +380. I think the Pacers are moving on. And this isn't a Pacers team I liked at the end of the season, but this is just a dream matchup for them, especially without Giannis on the court.
We have the Lightning and the Panthers that are coming to you here again in about 15 minutes. When we come back on the other side, Mike will give you his thoughts on this one. He does have a play, -185, Panthers at home, +154, Lightning on the road. And as we mentioned, this game is sitting, as that just flashes, +160. So +160 Lightning on the road. 5.5 is our total for all of the games today. Get Mike's thoughts on not only the total, but also on the side and any other plays that he might have in this one. Mike, of course, we'll get to the last NBA game a little bit later in the show as well. But we're going to get your thoughts on all things hockey when we come back here on The Handle. Let me tell you, Mike's heading back to that puck line. He loves it more than you love anything on the face of this planet.
This is The Handle with Matt Brown and Mike Summich on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
If you are not already a VSiN Pro subscriber, what are you doing? Mike, we've talked about this with these people. What are you doing? But guess what? We're still nice. We're nice over here at VSiN. We're going to give you a sneak peek of that betting splits page we know you love so much. VSiN.com/splits. 2 weeks absolutely free. Go and see where the money is coming in. You can see where the bets are coming in. And at the very least, you can see which games are getting a ton of action, and maybe it is a game that you should be paying more attention to. But we're going to give you 2 weeks absolutely free over there, VSiN.com/splits. Mike, it is a page that we know gets fired on all the time. People love that thing.
Yeah. Second most popular page on the VSiN website, only behind the pro picks. So
only behind my bio page. Only behind my bio page. That's all it is. Yeah.
Well, once we update the picture with the new hair, then maybe you'll jump above it. But we gotta wait a little bit there.
You get 404 errors whenever you try to go to my bio page. So many people are hitting it. That's what it is.
It's just
are those still a thing? Are 404 errors still a thing?
Oh yeah,
they are.
404 errors still a thing.
All right. I didn't know. Listen, I know very little about the programming side of anything. I've just gotten multiple 404 errors. That's why I spit that out. Okay. So we are about, let's call it 9 minutes away from a puck drop. And so I want to get your thoughts here on Lightning and Panthers. As we were on break, it moved to minus 192 in favor of the Panthers now. 5.5 is our total. Heavily juiced to the under here, minus 135 on the under. Mike, what are we looking at?
I like the Panthers in this series. We talked about this one quite a bit. I mentioned this yesterday, taking the minus 1.5 plus 154 yesterday at the end of the show. Mentioned it at the start of the show. It was still plus 150 at the start of the show. We have seen a lot of Panthers money roll in here. They were minus 180 to start the show. Now they're up to minus 192 in the game. I agree with the move. Look, this Panthers team, their calling card was offense last year. This year, they've got that offense, but they have the defense to go with it. Gave up the least goals in the Eastern Conference at 200. Second in the NHL, only behind the Dallas Stars, who gave up 199 goals. And the problem with this Lightning team, yes, they are playoff tested, but they gave up the most goals of any team to make the playoffs in the Eastern Conference. Vasilevsky has his worst goals against average coming into this playoffs that he's had in his entire career. That's an issue. And their top line scoring and their power play, very good. Can the Panthers stay out of the box? That's going to be one of the big keys for them, because there is an advantage there with that Lightning power play versus this Panthers penalty kill. I think this is a Panthers team, though, that is ready to roll. They've got playoff experience from last year. They've got the goaltending. They've got the scoring. And I do lean toward the over here, too. I think the minus 135 number is accurate. Like I said, I thought this was going to be 6 when this series came out. These teams have played 3 times. In those 3 games, they've scored 24 goals, Matt. That's 8 goals a game. Now, playoff hockey, obviously a little tighter defensively, but 8 goals a game, still a lot more than 5.5.
Yeah, if you're looking at playing the over there, minus 135, the under plus 114. Our second puck drop, Capitals and the Rangers, minus 265 Rangers, so a big favorite in this one at home. Plus 215 Capitals on the road. This is also a 5.5 total. That said, this one a little bit more manageable on both sides. Minus 118 on the under, minus 102 on the over.
Yeah, this one does feel about right. I thought this would be 5.5. You're going to see some money consistently coming in on unders in NHL games in the playoffs. We saw both games last night go under. Those were just more defensive hockey games than you're generally going to see in the regular season. I think that fits here, especially with the Rangers team that is very good at keeping the puck out of their own net. You've got top tier goaltending for the Rangers. You've also got top tier offense. I think this is a Rangers team that should be able to get through a Caps team rather easily here. If you're looking for something to play here, we're going to talk about this one in the pucks and ponies section as well. I took the Rangers minus the goal and a half plus 120. That was at 8:30 this morning, Matt, Pacific time. Now here we are sitting an hour later. It's already down to plus 105. So we're seeing a lot of money rolling on the Rangers as well. Don't hate the idea of the Rangers to win the first period. Rangers minus a half goal in the first period as well. Very good first period team and very good defensively at home as well. So I do think the Rangers end up winning the first period. You can get that a little bit of plus money if you're looking to find a way to reduce the juice here.
Avalanche and the Jets, our third game of the day. This one about a coin flip. 115 Jets, 105 on the Avalanche. 5.5 again on our total. The over minus 122.
This is going to be a fun series. This is the series in the East in the West I am looking forward to the most. These are 2 legitimate Stanley Cup contenders, yet because they're both in the Central and are behind Dallas, they get to play each other in the first round. You can see one of the best, if not the best goalie in the NHL, Connor Hellebuck, will be in the nets for the Jets against one of the best offenses in the NHL with what the Avalanche are able to roll out there with 4 separate lines. You've got McKinnon, who arguably the MVP of the NHL. I thought he played phenomenal all season. He and Connor McDavid, the 2 best players you're going to see in these Stanley Cup playoffs. Sorry, Austin Matthews, you're great as well. But this is just going to be a barn burner of a series. The Jets loaded up at the deadline from an offensive perspective to try and make sure that they could complement that defense that they've got and the goaltending. I can't wait to watch this series. I think it's going to be a difficult one to bet. We do have a bet in the Pucks and Ponies segment on it, but this is one of those where you're tossing a coin. You're just flipping it to see who's able to advance.
What province is Winnipeg in?
Oh, man. I know it's the Western. I'm going to go Alberta.
Manitoba.
Oh,
Manitoba.
Is it next to Alberta? Am I close?
Sorry. Manitoba. 0 for 1 on that one.
Honestly, that was my
We'll give you a chance to redeem yourself at a later date. And then our final puck drop of the evening. Got the Nashville Predators and the Vancouver Canucks. This is minus 142 on the home Canucks, plus 120. Preds on the road, 5.5 the total here as well.
This is a Preds team that is the darling of the bettors, and I'm one of those people that have been talking about them, Matt. I think we've talked more about the Predators on this show in the last month and a half than any other hockey team in the NHL. They've been phenomenal down the stretch, really able to flip a switch. They've got a top-tier offensive weapon with Forsberg. They've got a top-tier defenseman in Yossi. They've got one of the better goaltenders in the tournament in Saros. To me, this is a team that's ready to make a run against a Vancouver team that kind of like the Magic, kind of like OKC, seems like they're a little ahead of schedule for what everyone projected. They were not a team that people expected to win the Pacific Division, yet they were able to do that this year. Unfortunately for them, they drew the Preds. Really tough first-round matchup. I like the Predators in this game. I played them in the series plus 130. I've got a Predators to win the Stanley Cup at 40-1. So I will be rooting for Smashville, baby.
I love it. I love it. All right, so we said we're going to talk a ton of NFL draft over the course of the show, Mike. And to finish out this segment, what do we think we know for sure? I guess we can kick things off here. Caleb Williams is going number one, right? I mean, like, yep. we know Caleb Williams is going number one, absolutely, for sure. I don't think that there's anybody out there at this point now who's trying to be wacky and say that he might not go number one. So let me move on from there and kind of progress down the line. Do we know for sure that this draft is going to go quarterback?
No. I don't think we do. I think that third position is the one that's a question mark where you may see the Patriots go Marvin Harrison Jr., but I would say it's highly likely we do go quarterback. We'll call it 90%.
Yeah, I feel like it's a certainty. I'm going to go ahead and say 99.9% that this thing goes quarterback. So I feel like that is also something that we know. I feel like that is a thing that we are almost 100% on. Do we know for sure, because this seems to be the sentiment here, do we know for sure that the Vikings are going to package these 2 first-round picks to try to move up in the draft?
I'm going to go with no again. I don't think we know for sure. I think if depending on how this plays out. So let's just stick with me here, Matt. Let's say 1, 2, 3 is quarterback. Let's say 4, we don't see a trade. And then the 5, we're sitting there and it's the Chargers on the clock. Do the Vikings really have to move up to get J.J. McCarthy all the way to 5? Like, are we sure that the Giants are going to take McCarthy at 6? Because I wouldn't be shocked if this goes quarterback, wide receiver. Yeah. And that you have a situation where then the Titans are at 7. It's like, okay, well, they're going to take an offensive lineman. There goes Joe Alt. All right, now we're sitting at 8. What would the capital cost the Vikings to go from 11 to 8? Not much. Are you sure you want to, if you're the Vikings, spend as much as you need to go all the way up? Or would you rather have 2 first-rounders than take, Knicks or take Penix Jr. later in the draft? We don't know if they're in love with J.J. McCarthy. We don't know if they have Knicks or Penix graded similarly to him. And the capital they could give up if they have to go up to the 8 number, to me, is just significantly less. That I'm not sold that this was Vikings are always going to move up. I feel like they would have already done it, honestly, into the 4 if they were going to.
I'd call these teams bluffs if I was them. I really would. And I think that's the scenario you set up is kind of how I expect this to play out on Thursday. I think you hold out and see if you get to the 8 pick. And then now you're not having to give up both first, right? Like, you're just swapping and maybe throwing a second or a third, whatever. It's just, I would hold out to 8. And if you're Minnesota, you would have to be very, very, very convinced that J.J. McCarthy's the future in order to give up what you're likely to have to give up to get up there. And so, and in Denver, your competition, Mike, they don't have the capital that you have. Denver doesn't have the capital. They don't even have a second-round pick, right? So it's like they can't give up their first and second. They don't even have a second-round pick. So, they don't have the capital to move up. I think if you're Minnesota, like you said, since nothing's happened so far, I think they've sat back and kind of addressed how this might play out and realize that they're in a little bit better position than most people think that they are.
Well, and if the Cardinals are going to trade the 4 or the Chargers are going to trade the 5, don't they have to call the Vikings once they have a trade offered to them and say, hey, Are you going to match this? And the Vikings can absolutely blow everyone's offer out of the water. They have all the cards in this situation. I think that they're able to sit back.
It's going to be amazing. Let's talk some wide receivers when we come back.
This is The Handle with Matt Brown and Mike Summage on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
If you do not already have a DraftKings Sportsbook account, we have a deal for you. Go in, sign up, use the promo code VSiN, VSIN. When you make that deposit and make your first bet of at least $5, we're going to give you $200 instantly in bonus bets. That's all you got to do. Use the promo code VSiN, VSIN, make that deposit, bet at least $5, and we're going to give you $200 instantly in bonus bets over at DraftKings Sportsbook. DraftKings, the crown is yours. Matt Brown, Mike Samich here on DraftKings Network and VSiN, talking the NFL draft. We are underway in the NHL up there. It is still 0-0 early on, so we'll keep you updated on how that all plays out. But, Mike, we're talking about things that we think we know. And so one of the things that I think I know, because I bet this, and I bet the under of 6.5 wide receivers to go in the NFL draft. And, you know, it is a very deep wide receiver class this year. And I actually think where a lot of people think, well, oh, man, that obviously means the over because there's so many good guys. It actually kind of increases the variance, right, of these second-tier guys, where I think a lot of guys are anywhere from could go 28th, could also go 38th. It could go 29, 30, could go 40, 45, because there might be a lot of teams, Mike, whenever they get called on the clock and they look and they see, we could use a receiver, but 3 guys are left or 4 guys are left that we have rated basically the exact same. So are we going to use this pick now on one of these guys when we are pretty sure that one of these 4 guys is going to be available whenever we pick again? And I think that's going to come down a lot in all of this. And I think there are only 4 surefire guys to go in the first round, and then we will have one more. And even if we have one more after that, like Harrison, Neighbors, Odunze, and Thomas are going to go for sure. We know that. Maybe Mitchell sneaks in. Maybe Worthy sneaks in. Whatever. But that being said, that still only gets us to 6. Where are we getting to 7? I can't get there. And like, this is one of those bets where we talk about sometimes whenever you're betting the NFL draft, you have to lay juice. I am very, very comfortable paying the juice in this bet because I just don't see 7 guys getting their name called in the first round.
I would be very surprised if we get to 7. I like the way that you broke that down as well. When you have these deep positions, a lot of times you'll see teams decide to wait till the second round and move up 5 spots, 10 spots in the second round to take the guy that they want because you've got so many guys rated closely. And when I look at this, I mean, it's interesting as well. If you look at mock drafts, defensive players seem to be getting a lot of steam in the late rounds and the late teens as well, or the late first round and late teens in these mock drafts, which would push offensive players down. Specifically, it's offensive linemen and wide receivers that because of the depth, there are 15 offensive linemen that are legitimately good. Yeah. You can wait and take one in the second round. There are, you can get McMillan as the 14th overall rated wide receiver. He was phenomenal for Washington last year. And so there is talent to be had later in these drafts. And when I look at the wide receivers, I think you can say 5 are going to go. I think that you're going to see, obviously, the big 3. Thomas out of LSU is going to go as well. I think Mitchell from Texas goes as well. But after that, the question is, do we really think it's 2 more in the first round? I agree with you. I feel like this is definitely an underside. The juice has started to get a little bit higher at 240, but these is one of the the draft is one of the few markets where I'm willing to lay minus 240.
I've laid 600 before on stuff where I was like super, super, super confident. And for me with this one, again, like there's such a margin for error, again, in my opinion, right? Because you and I both think 4 for sure. We know the 4 that are definitely going. 1 more probably goes. And then that still gives us a 2 more receiver margin for error of this going against us. And I can't imagine there's a draft board out there that has Franklin or Coleman or McConkey or whatever, like drastically rated different. I imagine they are all probably rated somewhere all along in the same kind of bubble there. And as you mentioned, like it's just going to cost you a lot less. It's going to be a lot easier to just move in some point in the second round if you really are in love with one of those guys to come up and get them as opposed to taking your first round pick on those guys. And so for me, it's one of my favorite bets I've made. Now, the juice has moved in the direction of the bet that I made. But again, for a draft bet, when I have what I consider to be a 2-person margin of error, I would lay the 240 all day long. If you were coming in cold and you said, hey man, what's your favorite draft bet? This is my favorite draft bet that I have in my account. Like it is my favorite bet that I have in, and I would make it right now, even if I didn't already have it at a better number.
Yeah, I could see someone reaching for Coleman in the first round just because of what a big threat he is in the red zone and the talent that we saw at Florida State being able to catch touchdowns. The question is, like, who else is they going to jump up for? Because I agree with you. When you get past this top tier, there's a lot of guys who are very similar, who it's like 6 of one, half dozen the other. You're flipping a coin on whether or not you think they're going to be the guy. I don't see them wildly rated differently. So I agree with you, Matt. 240, not a bad price there. I like Neighbors as second overall wide receiver as well. I'm surprised that price isn't higher. I played it at minus 265. It's minus 290 now. If you look at the first wide receiver, Harrison's minus 550 at this point. Odunze minus 350 for third. Why is it only minus 290 for Neighbors to go second? That doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, the interesting one is the over-under on Brian Thomas. Like we are all under the assumption that he is going to go in the first round. So we're all there. This is now moved. You can find anywhere from 17.5 all the way to 19.5 on draft position for him. And trying to figure out where Thomas goes is kind of the interesting thing here, Mike, because you start to look at some of these teams and you go, if a team is in love with Thomas, he could go as high as, one of those kind of middling teens picks if they don't want to go for a quarterback, right? But then the other thing is like, okay, well, could this continue to go tick, 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 tick a little bit further down? What do you think his floor is? Like, what would be the bottom out position, do you think, for Brian Thomas?
I don't think he gets past the problem. I don't think he gets past Pittsburgh there. I think that's the lowest you're going to see. That's at 20. I don't see how they pass on him, especially with what they've done at the wide receiver position. I think he goes, I found it at DraftKings right now. It's 18.5 plus 100 for the under. I played it. It feels like he is. We talk about the depth of this class, and the wide receiver depth is phenomenal. But the fourth wide receiver off the board is clearly going to be Brian Thomas Jr.
Yes, and
right?
then it falls off, right? Like that's the thing.
Exactly.
It's there's 4 very, very good ones, and there's a lot of good ones, but like it's those 4, and then it kind of really there's a gap. There's definitely a gap.
And when you see that gap at a position, and it's a position where everyone talks about quarterbacks on a rookie deal. The new quarterback on a rookie deal is a wide receiver on a rookie deal. And when you have a clear number 4 guy, to me, that is someone that you go up and get. If you are really interested in adding a wide receiver, I think someone goes up and gets Brian Thomas Jr. before that 18 or that 19th pick. So I like the under at 18.5 plus 100.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting for me too, because we know why. You and I, and we can explain to the viewers and listeners right now. So we know why the number's set where it's set, because you have Jacksonville sitting there at 17. They need a receiver badly, right? And so it's kind of like that's why this is the tipping point of the number here for him. Further, the other tipping point is if he's still available for Cincinnati at 18, with the whole T. Higgins situation that they've got going on, they might pull the trigger, right? I mean, because knowing that T. Higgins is out the door next year for sure, they could just reload with another receiver, which ironically would be an LSU receiver with Burrow and Chase and all that. But like they would be able to just go ahead and stock the cupboard when they know T. Higgins is going to be out the door next year. And so I know why the number's set where it's set. I get it. I think if he's still there with Jacksonville, I mean, if you find 18.5s out there, I would for sure be taking the under, because if he somehow slipped past Jacksonville, he is not getting past Cincinnati. So, I mean, like, I think the floor for him is 18.
Cincinnati has quite a few needs on the defensive side. That's my one concern, but I agree with you. That's, like I said, DraftKings right now, 18.5. Yeah. I'll take the under plus 100. I don't think if anything, I think the under should be minus 130 right now versus the plus 100. I don't think there's a huge edge here at 18. If you can get 19.5, I do think there's a pretty big edge, but 18.5, I feel like there is still value to play the under there, because he is a valuable talent. And he is, again, clearly the 4th best wide receiver. After him, you can then make a case for 5 or 6 guys as the next one off the board. And when you have a clear drop in positional value, that's the type of player that people are going to reach for, that are going to go up and get. We saw it with Gibbs last year, running back. He was clearly the 2nd best running back. After that, there wasn't that much. Yep. We saw Detroit say, we're going to reach a little bit. We're going to go ahead and take him because we believe there's value. I think someone does something similar here for Brian Thomas Jr.
Tip-off coming in about 5 minutes. Heat and the Celtics. This is still sitting 14 over at DraftKings in favor of the Celtics. 210 is your total. If you think the Heat pull a stunner, plus 750 on the money line. I do not think that, Mike. As I said, I'm Celtics with a sweep here, so I'm just going to kind of sit back on the ticket that I've got. Weirdly enough, if you force me to bet this game, I would probably take the 14 with the Heat, but I'm just going to sit back and just hope the Celtics get it done.
I decided to get a little action. I played Celtics minus 8.5 first half, so it took a little bit, not a big number, just a little bit of a little live sweat here for everybody. But I do think Celtics first half is the way to attack this if you're going to play this game.
Again, that tip-off coming to you here in about 5 minutes. So if you want to get in on the Heat and the Celtics, you need to do so right now. 14 in favor of the home Celtics. 210 is your total. When we come back, we'll see if this line has moved at all before tip and get into some good news, bad news.